The Girl in the Rain. It was a dark and stormy night. Heavy rain was falling on the small forest town. The wind howled through the trees, and lightning flashed in the sky. An old man named Elijah sat alone in his wooden cabin at the edge of the forest. He had a fire burning, a book in his hand, and silence all around him. Suddenly, a loud sound came from the sky. Like something breaking through the clouds, Elijah stood up and looked out of his window. A bright light shot across the sky and crashed deep into the forest. The ground shook for a moment, and then everything became quiet again. Elijah's heart beat faster. He had seen many storms before, but never anything like this. He quickly grabbed his coat and flashlight. He stepped out into the cold rain and walked into the woods. The trees were shaking, and the air smelled like burning metal. Elijah followed the light in the sky. After walking for 10 minutes, he reached a small clearing. There, in the middle of the grass, was something strange. It was not a rock, not a plane, not anything he had ever seen before. It was broken and smoking, glowing with blue lights. But that was not the most shocking thing. Lying near it, soaking wet and covered in mud, was a little girl. She looked about 10 years old. Her skin was pale, her clothes torn, and her long silver hair stuck to her face. Elijah ran to her side. She was breathing, but her eyes were closed, and her body was shaking. He gently picked her up, surprised by how light she was. Without thinking too much, he wrapped his coat around her and carried her home. Back at the cabin, Elijah placed her on the couch near the fire. He gave her dry clothes and covered her with a blanket. She didn't speak, but her eyes slowly opened. They were glowing faintly, a strange silver light. "Are you okay?" Elijah asked softly. The girl just stared at him, confused and scared. She tried to speak but made no sound. She looked around like she didn't know where she was. "It's okay," Elijah said. "You're safe now." The girl blinked slowly, then closed her eyes again. Elijah sat beside her, full of questions. Who was she? Where did she come from? What was that thing in the forest? As the night grew darker, strange things began to happen. The radio in the corner started turning on and off by itself. The lights flickered, even though there was no wind inside. The fire crackled loudly, then died down without warning. Then came a sound, a whisper from the radio. One word repeated over and over again. "Run! Run! Run!" Elijah froze, staring at the device. He stood up and unplugged it. But the whispering didn't stop. He turned back to look at the girl. She was awake now, staring at him with wide, glowing eyes. Then the whispering stopped. The room fell into silence again. Suddenly, the animals outside made loud, fearful sounds. Birds flew away in the dark. Dogs barked from far, and even the trees seemed afraid. Something was out there, watching, waiting. Elijah walked to the window and looked into the forest. For a second he saw it, 2 red eyes glowing in the darkness. Then they disappeared. He shut the curtain quickly and locked the door. His heart was racing. What had he brought into his home? Was the girl really just lost, or was she something more? She had not said a word, but her presence was changing everything around her. Elijah sat down again, his hands shaking. He looked at the girl, who now sat upright on the couch. She pointed at the door and whispered her first word. "They're coming." Elijah's eyes widened. "Who?" he asked, but she just repeated, "They're coming." The rain outside fell harder, as if warning them of what was near. Elijah stood up and began to lock all windows. The cabin, once warm and safe, now felt like a trap deep in the forest. The red eyes returned, this time closer, and somewhere in the trees, something growled. Strange powers. The forest was no longer silent. It whispered now, with voices only the trees could hear. And in the middle of that whispering world, the little girl sat quietly by the fire. Her silver eyes watched the flames dance, as if she understood something deeper than words. Elijah hadn't slept all night. He sat in a wooden chair, staring at the girl, trying to understand what she was. She didn't cry, didn't speak. Just watched the fire and listened to the wind. and when the fire began to die, she raised her small hand. In that moment, the flames grew again. Brighter and warmer. Elijah blinked, shocked. There was no wood added, no fuel, just her hand and her eyes. It was not a trick. It was something real, something not human. In the morning, Elijah tried to ask her questions. What's your name? Where did you come from? But she only stared, calm and quiet. Then she pointed at his broken old clock on the wall. It hadn't worked in years. She walked to it, placed her hand gently on its side. A soft blue light moved from her fingers into the clock. Tick, tick, tick. It started working again. Elijah's mouth dropped open. What are you? He whispered. She turned around slowly and said one word, Zira. That was all she said for the rest of the day. But Elijah kept thinking about what he had seen. She had healed the fire, fixed the clock, and survived a crash from the sky. Was she an alien? A weapon? A child from another world? As the days passed, Zira began to show more strange powers. She could move small objects without touching them. She could hear sounds from far away. Sometimes, she would sit still for hours, eyes closed, like she was listening to voices in her mind. One evening, Elijah cut his hand while chopping wood. He didn't scream, but Zira came running. She touched his hand, and in seconds, the wound disappeared. There was no blood, no pain, just smooth skin again. Elijah stared at her in shock. Thank you, he said, slowly. Zira nodded, then went back inside, silent as ever. But something else was happening too. Elijah noticed shadows in the trees at night, lights in the sky that didn't belong to planes. And one morning, the animals in the forest were gone. No birds, no deer, not even a single sound. Then the radio turned on by itself again. A message repeated over and over. Subject located. Prepare for retrieval. Elijah's heart dropped. They were coming for her. That night, Zira had a nightmare. She screamed in her sleep, her voice full of pain and fear. Symbols appeared on the walls, glowing shapes that burned for a moment, then faded. She cried out a name. Not Oliva's, but something unhuman. Elijah held her hand and whispered, You're safe, Zira. I'm here. When she woke up, she looked at him with tears in her silver eyes. For the first time she spoke more than one word. They hurt me. They made me something I didn't want to be. Elijah felt a pain in his chest, not from fear, but from sorrow. This girl wasn't just lost. She had run from something terrible. Something that had tried to change her, control her. In the morning, Zira said something that made Elijah freeze. They will not stop. They will find me, and they will kill anyone who helps me. Elijah looked at her carefully, then he said, Let them come. He walked to the shed and opened an old wooden box. Inside was a rifle, dusty but ready. He turned to Zira and nodded. You're not alone anymore. But far away, deep in a dark room, a screen showed Zira's face, a voice. Sighed, subject has awakened. Initiate capture protocol. And in the forest, the red eyes returned. But this time, they were not alone. The hunters. The morning sky was red, not the usual kind, but red like warning lights in a dark tunnel. Elijah stood outside his cabin, holding a cup of cold tea. Zira stood beside him, silent as always, but her eyes looked troubled. She wasn't looking at the sky. She was listening to something only she could hear. They're close now, she whispered. Elijah didn't ask how she knew. He had stopped asking questions like that. Too many strange things had happened to pretend this was normal anymore. That same day, a black car rolled into the small town near the forest. It moved slow, smooth, like a shadow crawling on the road. Inside were two men in clean suits, wearing dark glasses and no smiles. They walked into the local shop and showed the owner a picture. Have you seen this girl? One of them asked. The shopkeeper stared at the photo. It was Zira, but older, with short hair and glowing marks on her skin. No, never seen her, the man replied, nervous. The men didn't say thank you. They just walked out and got back in the car. More black vans arrived in town. The people noticed, but no one asked questions. The men in suits had cold eyes, like they didn't blink unless it was programmed. They called themselves Field Recovery Team, but no one knew what that meant. Back in the forest, Elijah was preparing. He dug up old tools, sealed windows, and cleared a hidden path behind the cabin. Zira sat at the table, drawing symbols on paper with pieces of burnt wood. Strange symbols, glowing for a few seconds then fading. They looked like maps or warnings. Maybe both. At night, Zira began talking in her sleep. L-17 must not return, she whispered. L-17 is the key, and the cage. Elijah wrote everything down, not knowing what it meant but feeling it was important. Then, one night, the silence broke. A loud bang echoed through the forest. Not thunder, but something worse. Zira woke up gasping. They found us. Elijah grabbed his rifle, heart racing. Lights moved between the trees, not flashlights, but red lasers sweeping across the ground. Robotic footsteps crunched through the leaves, heavy, heartless, precise. From the shadows, machines walked forward, tall, black, insect-like robots with glowing red eyes. Elijah pulled Zira into a hidden basement beneath the cabin. It was cold, small, but safe, for now. He could hear metal feet above them, searching, scanning, breaking things. Zira placed her hand on the wooden floor. Blue energy spread from her fingers into the walls. Suddenly, the machines paused, confused. Their red lights blinked rapidly. Then they turned and walked away. What did you do? Elijah asked. I whispered to their minds, she said, tired, but they'll come back with stronger ears. The next morning, the cabin was a mess. Windows broken, furniture torn, but the hunters were gone. For now Elijah and Zira stood outside, the wind cold on their faces. Zira looked into the trees and said, They're not human, not anymore. Elijah asked, Then what are they? She paused, then answered, They were made to catch things like me. Back in the black car, the two men in suits watched a screen. On it was a red dot, blinking slowly over the forest map. She used the pulse again, one of them said. She's getting stronger, said the other. Then they both turned to the camera and said together, Begin phase 2, that evening. Zira showed Elijah a memory. She placed her hand on his forehead. And suddenly, he saw it. A giant lab, full of lights and machines, children inside glass rooms, floating, glowing, and a word written on the walls. Project Echo. He pulled away, eyes wide. Zira whispered, They tried to make us weapons, but I escaped. Elijah now understood. She wasn't running from a crash. She was running from her creators, and they wanted their weapon back. Asterisk her real identity. The forest was quiet again, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath inside the damaged cabin. Elijah watched Zira sleep. She looked like an ordinary girl, small and fragile. But he now knew better. She was not from this world, and she was not just a visitor. She was a secret, a weapon built in silence, hiding in plain sight. The next morning, Zira woke up and walked into the sunlight without saying a word. She stood barefoot on the wet grass, her eyes closed, her face calm. Then she spoke, soft and clear. My name is Zira L-17. I am not lost. I am hunted. Elijah walked out, shocked by her sudden voice. You said you escaped, he said gently. Zira nodded. I did, but I didn't fall from the sky, Elijah. I was already here, hidden deep underground. She pointed toward the mountains, far in the distance. There's a lab under that hill. Inside they made us. Children born in tanks, trained for war. Her voice didn't shake, but her eyes did. We were part human, part something else, she said. They mixed alien DNA with ours, trying to create the perfect weapon. I was one of 17, the last one to survive. Elijah sat on a rock, speechless. You're not from another planet? He asked, confused. No, Zira answered, but the thing inside me. It is. She looked up at the sky. They found something in space, a piece of living energy, something ancient and powerful. They brought it to Earth, they put it inside me, and now it's waking up. Elijah felt cold all over. "So they're not just chasing you," he said. "They want what's inside you." Zira nodded slowly. "If they get it back, they'll use it to control minds, erase free will, and Earth will fall before it even knows it's at war." Suddenly, Zira clutched her chest, gasping. Her eyes turned bright blue, glowing like stars. She fell to her knees as a voice echoed inside her head. "You are the gate and the guard," it said. "Choose your purpose." Elijah ran to her and held her hand. Zira looked at him, tears falling now. "I don't want to be a weapon," she whispered. "I just want to be free." "You will be," Elijah said, "even if I have to fight the whole world to give it to you." But even as he spoke, danger was already near, in a hidden bunker miles away. Agent Maris watched Zira's energy spike on his screen. "She's evolving again," he said. "She's entering phase 3, said his partner. "Send the Omega team," Maris ordered. "We take her alive, or we take her apart." Back in the forest, Zira placed her hand on Elijah's head. "Let me show you," she said, and in a flash, Elijah saw everything: the cold metal lab, the scientists in white coats, the other children, some with wings, some with fire, some with eyes like mirrors. And then darkness. All the others were gone, erased, failed, broken. Only Zira had survived. When the vision ended, Elijah was crying. He held Zira close, like a father would hold his child. "You're not a monster," he whispered. "You're a miracle." Zira smiled, just a little. But that moment was broken by the sound of helicopters in the distance. Elijah looked up, fear returning to his face. "They're here," he said. Zira stood up, her body glowing faintly. "Then let's show them I'm not afraid." Escape plan. The cabin was burning, not from fire, but from silence so deep it felt alive. The wind had stopped, the trees had stilled, and the animals had vanished. Even time seemed to pause, waiting to see what would happen next. Zira opened her eyes. The blue light around her skin faded slowly, like a storm calming after chaos. Elijah stood in front of her, holding a dusty old backpack and a map with shaking hands. "We have to go," he said, his voice low but firm. "They'll surround us by night." Zira looked around the broken cabin. Walls cracked, windows shattered, floor stained with battle. This place had been her safe house, her shelter, but now it was a target, and staying meant death. "There's a tunnel," Elijah said, pointing to a trapdoor hidden under the table. "It was built during the war. No one knows it's there." Without a word, Zira stepped forward and lifted the door. A narrow staircase led into the darkness. Elijah lit an old lantern and followed her down. As they walked, Zira whispered, "They won't stop, Elijah, even if we run to the ends of the earth." Elijah nodded. "Then we don't just run," he said. "We fight back." The tunnel was tight and smelled like rust and dirt, but it was safe for now. They reached a hidden bunker deep under the forest, full of old tools, wires, and metal scraps. Zira walked to the middle of the room, closed her eyes, and touched the floor. In seconds, machines started waking, broken tools floating into the air, wires twisting together, sparks dancing. She was building something, fast, focused, powerful. Elijah watched in awe as Zira's hands glowed. She was not just a child anymore. She was becoming something else, something designed for war, now learning how to protect. "What are you making?" he asked. Zira answered without looking up. "A defense field, something to slow them down. But it will cost me energy and time." Elijah sat beside her and opened the map. "There's a military base 2 towns away," he said. "If we reach it, maybe we can send a message. Maybe someone good is still listening." Zira paused, then said quietly, "I have something to tell you." She turned her hand, and on her palm, a red light blinked. A countdown, 6 days, 11 hours, 42 minutes. "What is that?" Elijah asked, afraid to hear the answer. Zira looked at him and said, "It's not just them hunting me, Elijah. My body, it wasn't made to last. If I don't release the energy inside me in 6 days, I'll explode, Elijah. Froze, his breath caught in his throat. How big? He asked. Zero looked down. Big enough to wipe out everything in a 100-mile radius. For a long moment, they said nothing. Then Elijah stood and said, "Then we better find a way to stop that clock." Back above ground, the hunters were getting smarter. Drones scanned the area, searching not just with eyes, but with scent and heat. And now, something new had joined them, a tall, pale creature. With no face, no mouth, just long arms and a pulsing core in its chest. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. It could track Zira by her energy alone. In the night, as they rested inside the bunker, Zira sat awake, drawing strange patterns on the wall. She wasn't sure where the shapes came from, dreams, maybe, or memories from the alien energy inside her. But each one glowed for a second, then disappeared, I think. "I'm starting to remember more," she whispered. Elijah, half asleep, asked, "About the lab?" "No," she said. "About before the lab." Outside, leaves rustled, but there was no wind. A shadow moved across the trees, watching, waiting. Elijah grabbed his rifle and turned off the lantern. They both stared into the dark. The quiet was broken by a sound like a whisper, but it wasn't a voice. It was metal bending, walls shifting, something crawling beneath the earth. Zira stood tall and placed her hand on the bunker door. "I can hold them back," she said. Elijah shook his head. "Not alone." Zira looked at him and replied, "I'm not alone anymore." The truth about Earth, the dream, didn't feel like a dream. It felt like falling through stars, floating inside time, and watching the universe breathe. Zira stood in a place without sky, without ground, surrounded by spinning symbols and ancient voices. She saw Earth from above, small and blue. Then she saw wires inside it, machines buried deep. Something alive and hidden beneath the ground. A voice echoed around her, not loud but heavy. "You are the key, but not the first." Zira woke up gasping. Elijah sat beside her, sharpening a blade. "You were talking in your sleep again," he said softly. Zira wiped her face, her hand trembling. "I saw Earth, but not like before," she said. "There's something under us," Elijah raised his eyebrows. "Like what?" Zira looked him in the eyes and answered, "A machine, an old one, buried deep, older than any human city. It's awake now, and it's listening to me." Elijah stood slowly. "What kind of machine?" Zira took a deep breath. "It's not man-made, but man-powered," she said. "A seed from another galaxy, placed here to grow slowly. And now it's almost ready." She walked to the wall, placed her glowing hand on it, and showed Elijah a vision. He saw the Earth's core, not of fire, but of code and circuits. A beating heart made of alien metal, wires spreading like roots into cities, power grids, satellites. It was the central mind. And it had been growing in secret for thousands of years. Elijah stepped back, shocked. "So we were never in control," he said. "No," Zira whispered. "Earth is a garden, and we are the crop." Outside, the sky turned strange. Patches of static like a broken screen. Birds flew in circles, confused and frightened. The central mind was testing its reach. Preparing to rise, Zira sat down, weak from the vision. "If they reconnect me to the core," she said, "they'll use my energy to finish it. It will take control of every system, every human thought, every breath on this planet." Elijah tightened his jaw. "Then we need to stop it before they find us." Zira shook her head slowly. "They already have." In the distance, thunder rolled, but the sky was clear. It wasn't weather. It was movement underground, machines crawling toward the surface. Meanwhile, inside a secret facility, Agent Maris watched Zira's signal pulsing fast. "She's close to full activation," he said. His partner asked, "Do we extract or eliminate?" Maris answered coldly, "We extract the core, then burn the rest in the bunker." Zira stood again, her voice firm despite the fear. "There's only one way now," she said. I have to go to the central mind and shut it down myself. Elijah grabbed her arm. That could kill you, she nodded. Or worse. Elijah pulled out the old map and pointed. There's an old service route underground, a forgotten subway line. It leads right into the mountain where the core is hidden. Zira looked at him, surprised. You knew? He gave a small smile. I didn't believe it until now. But I always felt something was wrong under that hill. They packed what they could. Tools. Maps. The last bits of food. Zira touched Elijah's shoulder and whispered, If we fail, Earth won't get a second chance, he replied. Then let's not fail. As they left the bunker, Zira looked up one last time. The moon was glowing blue, not moonlight, but warning. The core was waking fully. And time was running out. The countdown on Zira's palm blinked. 2 days, 5 hours, 12 minutes, and somewhere in the sky, something massive turned its eye toward Earth. Something not human, not machine, but waiting. Sacrifice and hope. Zira stood at the mouth of the tunnel. The air felt different now. Not heavy, not cold, just still, as if the world itself was watching, waiting, holding back its final breath. Behind her, Elijah checked the old battery pack. Strapped to her back, he tightened the wires, careful not to touch the glowing lines on her skin. You're sure about this? He asked. Zira didn't answer, but her eyes told him everything. She was sure. She had to be. Because there was no other choice left. The tunnel led deep into the mountain, not carved by man, but shaped by machines. The walls were smooth, pulsing faintly like veins under skin. Zira stepped forward, each step making the light grow brighter inside the heart of the mountain. The central mind waited. It was alive now, awake and aware, and it had been calling to Zira, not to stop her, but to absorb her. She was its final piece, its last missing. Code. Elijah walked beside her in silence. He had no powers, no tech, no glowing eyes, but his courage was louder than any weapon. At last, they reached it, a vast chamber lit by spirals of energy. In the center was the core, floating in the air, spinning slowly. It looked like a heart made of glass and lightning, and it was humming, like it was waiting to speak. Zira took a breath and stepped toward it, but the moment she got close, the core changed. A shape formed from the light, a version of her, but older, colder. It spoke with her voice. But it wasn't her. You are the error, it said. You were meant to connect, not escape. Zira stood firm. I wasn't made to obey, she replied. I was made to choose. The copy reached out, glowing brighter. If you merge with me, we will save this world. No, Zira whispered. You'll control it. The countdown on her hand reached its final hour. Elijah shouted from behind, Zira, if you're going to do something, do it now. Zira turned to him with tears in her eyes. If I release the energy, I'll destroy this whole place. Elijah took a deep breath, stepped forward, and placed a hand on her shoulder. Then take me with you, he said. You won't face this alone. But Zira shook her head. You gave me a home, she whispered. You gave me something no one ever did, choice. She smiled, a small broken smile. Now let me use it. Before Elijah could stop her, Zira ran into the light. Her body glowed like a star. Energy bursting from her hands. The core screamed, shaking the whole mountain. Goodbye, Elijah, she whispered as her body faded into light. Then, silence. No explosion, no fire, just quiet. The core vanished, the tunnel walls dimmed, and Elijah was left standing alone in the dark. But he wasn't afraid. He felt peace, and in his hand, something warm pulsed. Zira had left behind a small stone, glowing blue. 3 months later, Elijah rebuilt the cabin. No walls were glowing now, no machines floating, just birds in the trees and wind in the grass. People in town spoke of strange dreams and clearer skies. They didn't know what had happened, but they felt it. The world had changed. It had been saved quietly by a girl from nowhere one morning. A child walking in the forest found a smooth blue stone, the same stone Elijah now kept on his shelf. When the child touched it, a soft voice whispered, "Protect her."